Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting, November 13th, 2023. Could we have a roll call, please?
Here. 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 Here.
Here. Thank you. The first item on our agenda is written communication. Dr. Davis, do we have any written communication?
We have no written communication this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right. The next item on our agenda is items for information, and that first item is recognition of national merit and national achievement scholars.
Thank you, Madam President. We will have Dr. Kinsey, our Assistant Superintendent and Principal, come to recognize our National Merit and our National Achievement Scholars this evening. Thank you, Dr. Kinsey.
Thank you. I am really excited to be able to honor our students and their families who are here with us tonight. So I'm going to ask each of our National Merit Scholarship Award recipients to come on up. We're going to share a little bit about the National Merit semifinalist activity, and we'll be able to honor their names as well. So come on up, and we're going to be able to say your names. Jacob DiCrescenzo, Anna Grigorescu, who's not here this evening, not able to join us. Sarah Shulkin is also not able to join us, but Xander Seneschal is. Come on up, Xander. Aiden Thompson. And Emmett Zaslow. Awesome. So these students are being recognized this evening, and they are a few of the approximately 16,000 semifinalists in the 69th Annual National Merit Scholarship Program. These academically talented high school seniors have an opportunity to continue in the competition for national merit scholarships that will be offered next spring. All 6 of our students entered the 2024 National Merit Scholarship Program competition by taking the 2022 PSAT and MSQT as juniors, and the nationwide pool of semifinalists representing less than 1% of U.S. high school seniors includes the highest scoring entrants in each state. So again, we are really excited to honor Jacob, Anna, Sarah, Xander, Aiden, and Emmett. So a round of applause. And I did prep them that they get to now go around, walk, and shake everyone's hands and receive your pin. So you can start right here, Ms. De La Fuente.
Congratulations. 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 Congratulations.
And scholars and families, if you are so welcome to leave now if you like to.
Or stay for another few
Or
hours.
can stay for another couple hours if you want.
Thank you. Congratulations again, all of you.
Thanks for coming.
So exciting. We should start all of our meetings like this. Right? Yes. Something to celebrate. Okay. I'm good with that. Okay. Yes. Okay, our next item is the opening of school report. So we're kind of on a roll.
All right, so we've got Dr. Carrie Levy, our Director for Research and Assessment, Dr. Pete Bavis, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, and they'll be doing, we can just kind of do it together, both the opening of school report and the year in review report.
Okay. We'll do them together.
You can do
Right.
them together.
Good evening. Nice to see you. All right, I'm going to start with my notes, with the opening of school for this year, 2023-24. I'm just doing a few highlights from the report, pretty brief. So this year's total enrollment is down about 100 from last year. It's the official enrollment as of September 30th, that's what the official enrollment date always is, snapshot in time, was 3,593. So just slightly lower than last year overall. And then, oh, these look small, sorry. The percent, so this one is just our proportion of enrollment by student group, and it's a 5-year trend, and I apologize, it looks small on the big screen. So basically, our proportion of enrollments for our Hispanic Latinx enrollments has remained steady. It's pretty much the same as last year. The proportion of Black African American enrollments has fluctuated over the last 5 years, and our white enrollments have decreased slightly, just proportionally compared to the last 5 years. Our special ed enrollments are consistent with last year, 427 as of September 30th. That's pretty similar to last year. And then the bilingual program enrollment, so this is up a little bit, it's 54. Just to note that while we have many more students who are identified as multilingual learner, this is a bilingual program, so it's in the bilingual services program shelter classes. So it's just a little nuance difference there. So usually those are the quick highlights I do for our opening of school enrollment. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions from the board?
I just have one quick.
Okay.
I just wanted to, do you understand, what is our understanding of the lower enrollment? Are kids moving out of the district? Are they going to private schools? Do you have any sense of what's driving the data?
No, I think what we saw the last couple of years, a bubble where we had higher, coming from District 65, higher cohorts, and we expected that to trend off a number of years ago, and so we're exactly
Okay.
where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's a good question. Anybody else? Leah?
Would it be appropriate to ask a couple of questions about what was in the report, but not necessarily just presented? So I just wanted to, you can hear, note that a couple of things that jumped out at me, and that was when I'm looking at enrollment in the grades, and then it's broken out by off-campus, safe school, and day school, so outside the main building. The percentage of students who are off campus, for the Black African American students, it's 30.8, which is discrepant with typically for the grades, the Black African American students are like 21 to 26. And I noticed that was it's gotten a little bit higher each year. And I just wondered I just kind of wanted to point that out and if we had any thoughts about that. Okay, all right. And then it looks like the freshman class from last year that are now sophomores, there was kind of an increase in reclassified students, and that happens sometimes. What does it look like in terms of what are we doing these days to really support those reclassified freshmen?
Sure, and I know some of these questions might play into your next piece on year in review.
Year in review, so I should hold off?
This report is it's really technical,
Yeah,
something that the board has
just
to
the
approve
numbers.
for the
Okay.
and all of that. But
Okay.
we'll get into some of the programmatic evaluation stuff
Sure.
at the next report. But it's all together, but
Sure.
we can do it later.
Yeah. what I'll add to, in answer to your question is, you know, we, from the very moment students are preparing to enter the high school, we are working to identify what plans and interventions we want to do for individual students as well as the grade as a whole. And so that's definitely part of the trajectory, is understanding what the needs are, but making sure there's interventions and plans throughout. And so that's definitely some pieces that the team have been doing, with an increase in a variety of interventions from 504 to special ed to general education. Thanks.
And you can hold on to that question. If you want more discussion later, we can do that. Other questions? Mira, your light's on. Do you have questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. No. Okay. All right. Thank you. We can move on now.
Okay, no problem. All questions welcome. All right, so we're going to move on to the year in review. So opening school enrollment is this year's enrollment. The year in review is last year's data. And so just to note that this year, as I talk about kind of like what's new, this report will look very different next year as we work to restructure and align it to the news district goals. So just preface this for.
Just say that one more time, say it one more time, Carrie, so to make sure that the board really heard what you're saying.
Okay, the report this year, this is reflecting on last year's data.
Okay.
Next year's report will be aligned to your new district goals. So I will look at alignment, goals, and what I've not been reporting, and make sure we're reporting everything that's in your goals. So it will look different.
The outcomes you mean the outcomes and the measures?
Yeah.
You keep saying goals, but we're talking about the outcomes and the
Yeah.
measures.
Yes. I will align the outcomes and measures I report on next year to your new district goals. Did I get it?
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. That's good. Looking forward to that.
Starting off with a tongue twister. Okay, so it's just, the report is an opportunity to incorporate some new data points that are not previously reported. I try not to repeat what's already available in the school report card, although I do lift up things that are specifically outlines measures, outcomes and measures aligned to the district goals. But things like disaggregating student well-being measures, it's not reported anywhere else typically. Any additional post-secondary planning and career readiness measures that we have to report that also align to the district goals. And so, like last year, this is organized by section. So we start out with our social emotional learning well-being section and the datas in that, which I'll walk through. And then we have academic and attendance data, kind of the inputs, and then the outputs are post-high school planning data. So just to repeat, this report includes students enrolled in the 2022-23 school year. And it's not just graduate cohorts. So in the past, we may have reported on just graduate cohorts. This one, since we're reporting on all the students, there are some measures where we report only the class of 2023 to be consistent. But most of the measures are like of all of the students. So we've got the class of 23, which were the seniors last year, the 24, which were juniors last year's sophomores, which were class of 2025, and then last year's freshmen, class of 2026. And then disaggregated by race, gender, meal status, students with an IEP, and our multilingual learner, which is a larger student group that we are now able to report more on. And then just reminding our continued focus on reporting, data reporting through visualization and an equity lens, thinking about adding qualitative data where we can, and just our use of colors to avoid bias or assigning values. So I like to use our ETHS color palette that you find around the school. Okay, so just some quick highlights, even though I'm going to talk about it a little bit more as we go on. We got highlights about over half of our students report that they feel like they belong quite a bit. This comes from our well-being survey every February. A quarter of the students feel connected to adults at ETHS. 45% feel that most or all of their teachers are really interested in how they are doing. And the majority of students report feeling, from the 5 essentials, feeling safe, comfortable, and respected with their teachers. And these results are similar to what was reported from the 2021-22 school year. Few more highlights, our average daily attendance for all students last year was 92.2, down just slightly compared to the prior year. 89% of our class of 2025, the freshmen last year, this year's sophomores, is on track for graduation. We'll talk more about that when we get to these slides. 88% of the class of 2023 that just graduated took at least one dual credit AP or Project Lead the Way course by the time they graduated, and this is an increase compared to the class of 2022.
Wait, slow down, that's an important one. Say it again.
Okay. But I have a whole slide on
I know, but let's just get the headline there. That's a good headline.
These are big.
88%.
These are
Big jump.
big,
That's-
yes.
Yes, okay, 88%. The class of 2023 that just graduated, 88% took at least one dual credit AP or Project Lead the Way course, which is an increase compared to 70% of the class of 2022. And when I get to that slide, I'll even tell you a little bit more about the class of 2021, but you're just gonna have to wait.
But you make us do the math. It should be, you should highlight 18% more.
Yes,
That's a lot.
20% more than the class of 2021.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Now we're talking.
Now we're talking. All right, and so last year we reported on the students that viewed Career Pathways info sessions. This year we've got data on students that actually participated in a Career Pathways fair. So I'll talk about that a little bit more when I get to that, but almost 1,000 students that participated in our Career Pathways fair last March. And then we have some data on students that participated in a one-week job shadow, 56 students during spring break last year, and then 32 students participated in paid summer internship, and 4 students were hired out of their internship or actually job shadow. And then just a couple more highlights, but I'll go into a little bit more detail with each slide. So we'll talk about our unweighted GPA. All students achieved a final unweighted GPA, so this would be class of 2023, of a 2.76 or greater, with a mean cumulative GPA of 3.23. The class of 2023's 4-year graduation rate was 92.8%. The class of 2022's 5-year graduation rate was 95.5%. And then 79% of students from the class of 2021 enrolled in a post-secondary institution 2 years after graduating from ETHS. I know I went through these fast because I'm going to take a little bit more time just for each slide to lift it up a little more. Okay. So from our our climate, our well-being survey, and the way these charts are is on a scale, we ask students how much they feel they belong at ETHS. And so the students, so on the teal are reporting they belong a little bit or not at all. The yellow in the middle is students that reported somewhat. And the green on the top is students reporting they belong quite a bit or completely. And so over half about half or slightly over half across all of the student groups, you can see we have it disaggregated by race, ethnicity, and then because this is a survey and students self-identify, we are able to report by gender identity and students who identify as non-binary transgender. And this is one of the few places that I can report data for students identifying as non-binary or transgender. And so students who identify as non-binary transgender are less likely to report that they feel quite a bit or completely, kind of a bigger group that are more likely to say somewhat and a smidge more, not at all. As we look at some more of our well-being data, we also ask students how connected they feel to adults at school, and this is similar, data is very similar to the prior year, where a majority report, it's kind of split between somewhat to not at all, and about a quarter across the board. They're pretty similar across the different student groups reporting quite a bit or completely. And then a third question we ask in this section of the survey is, how many teachers are really interested in how they are doing? And so just under half, it's pretty similar for most of the student groups are reporting most or all of their teachers are really interested. A small group are reporting somewhat, and then about a third across the board are saying reporting none to a few. Okay, one more measure we look at for student well-being is we look at the percent of students that participate in extracurricular activities. So this particular data, which I know you'll have a report later this year on school involvement and activities, and this is specific to fine arts, athletics, and student activities and clubs. And so I have 3 years. So the numbers represent the data from 2023. So overall, last year, 75% of the students participated in extracurricular activity. That's fine arts, student activity club, or athletics. That's compared to 65% from 2022 and 57% from 2021. So we can just see the growth across every subgroup over the last 2 years. When I look at data that includes students participating in at least one fine art, extracurricular activity, club, athletics. If I include attending one of the social consciousness series, summits, homecoming or prom, it goes to 91% of our students that participated in one of those extracurricular activities or school connection throughout the year. All right. A few slides on our section on academic and attendance measures. So here's our average daily attendance rate last year was 92.2. The state benchmark is for an average daily attendance is 95%. The state average last year was 91.2%. And you can see this, the far left, dark blue is all of our students. In the middle, identified as our students by race, ethnicity, and then yellow is our students with an IEP, our students who are eligible for free or reduced lunch is green, and then students who are identified as multilingual learner are the orange. I think over the head. Okay. Last year, for the class of 2026, freshmen, 89%. The state report is on track for graduation. That's 4-year graduation. We know we keep our students for 5 years when they're behind, and that's something we look to do. This is the orange, and the top bar across is overall of our students at 89.1%, and the Illinois overall average was 87.4. This is lower than the prior year. Last year's the class of 2025 was 93%. That was in the school year 2022. And again, I have this disaggregated by race, ethnicity, gender, students with IEP, free reduced, and students who identify as multilingual learners. We do know, so this is data from last year. So we are been proactive. I've shared, for example, our students with an IEP, it says 70%, 71% almost, that are considered on track. So I have shared the specific student list that the state has identified as not on track with our director of special ed, so she can be proactive, work with individual student plans, was already familiar with some of the students on the list. So we have been taking this data and trying to be proactive, knowing that it kind of comes late in the year as we work through it. All right. And then unweighted, cumulative unweighted GPA. So this is the class of 2023. By the time they graduated, their final cumulative unweighted GPA was 3.23. And so that 2.8 threshold, that's in our summative designation. That's a threshold that the state sets as 2.8, so that's why that's there. So every subgroup is near or above. We have our students who identify as African American Black are at 2.77, and our students who are eligible for free reduced lunch are at 2.76, but every other, and students who are identified as multilingual learner are 2.75, all very close to the state's 2.8 threshold. And then, here's the one. So this is our slide for our 88% of seniors, class of 2023, who took at least one AP Project Lead the Way or dual credit course. So 88% So 99%, once I include honors, that's 99% of all students. When we focus in on the advanced courses like AP, Project Lead the Way, or dual credit, that's where we have 88% of the class of 2023 that took at least one. And that's an increase, like we were saying, the 70% of the class of 2022. And the class of 2021, it was 68%. So it's 20% higher than the class of 2021. And then this one is reported by our race ethnicity. All right. And so a couple of slides on post-high school planning. So as I mentioned, last year reported on the number of students that viewed career info sessions. This started probably when we were remote, and then we had virtual sessions. Here I'm reporting the students that attended the Career Pathways Fair, so more hands-on and active. And so almost 1,000, 992 students attended, and around the wheel is all the different career pathways that were represented. We had 40 employers through MEAC business partners. And then, I believe this was the first time last year, the aviation career, okay, thank you.
Last year was the first year.
So last year was the first year the students attended the ETHS Aviation Career Exploration Day, and we had over 1,000 students, and there were 20 exhibitors and business partners. And then along with our career readiness, this is the first time I have some data on students participating in job shadowing. So last year there was 56 students that participated in the 1-week job shadow during spring break. And then underneath it, or the number of students and all the different pathways that they participated with the employers they worked in. And then 32 students participated with a paid summer internship, and that's an increase over the year before when it was 28. And then out of the summer internship and job shadow experience, we had 4 students hired based on their from their work-based learning experience. And then a couple more, our 4-year and 5-year graduation rates. So our 4-year class of 2023 was 92.8%, but I mentioned our 5-year, so our 5-year is up for the class of 2022. They went from 94 to 95.5%. We usually see an increase when it comes to our 5-year rates. And in the report, it has all of these disaggregated by race, ethnicity, and other student groups. And then looking at our post-secondary enrollment, which comes from National Clearinghouse. So this is enrollment anytime during the first 2 years after high school. So since it's 2 years out, the class of 2021 is 79%. And then looking far out, 6-year post-secondary graduation rate for the class of 2016 is 52%. So this is of the entire cohort of the class of 2016, regardless of whether or not they went to a post-secondary institution or not, 52% graduated from some post-secondary institution within 6 years. When we look at the percent of students who enrolled into a post-secondary institution within 2 years after high school, we look at the students that it did enroll, then the graduation, the 6-year post-secondary graduation rate is 65% for that. And that's above the national rate for this same cohort was 62%. And I think that's a smidge higher than the Illinois rate also. Okay, those are just the highlights from the report. So I'll take any questions before we move on to the report card.
A lot to take in. Gretchen, you have a question.
First, thanks for the nice-looking report. Every single year, you're tweaking and improving, and I appreciate that. And I think you've also incorporated all these principles of equity into your data analysis, like that organization that I love, that I know you also, we all count. And you've clearly utilized some of their suggestions, which I think is really great. But to the substance, two main points I wanted to ask about or make. The first is on the well-being point, the three kind of interrelated questions about whether our students feel supported or comfortable or as if they belong at the school. I have to say, I don't mean to be unduly negative, but I'm a little disappointed that more of our students don't feel that they belong. Maybe that's a double negative. We seem to be kind of holding steady with this, and it suggests to me that we need to be doing something different, and I'm not sure that I have the answers to what it is that we need to do different. And of course, we're coming out of the pandemic, but that's kind of getting old now. We can't keep pointing to that. It just seems to me that more than half of our students, like a lot more than half of our students, like almost all of our students should feel like they belong all the time. So I don't know how we crack that nut. But it surprises me, and it has to do with connections within this building. And I think we have a very large student body compared to most schools. And we do our best to make it feel small, but I think it's very easy for individual students to be simply lost in this mix. And I don't know, that's the only thing I can come up with. And we're not being systematic about connecting with individual students. We're not really looking for the disconnected. Maybe. I don't know. I'm surmising. As I said at the outset, I really don't know what the answers are, but I think it's an area that we need to focus on. And I don't know if there's anything more you want to say about it.
Well, I would say that that's part of our overall message and how we've structured our system to be looking for students, and we talk about connectedness all the time.
Yep.
And I'm also curious as to why the numbers look the way that they do, and I think in part could be we give this survey in the dark of winter in February when everybody's tired of each other and school. And if
Yeah.
you look at the 5 essentials, it's very different. Not very different, but it's better. So I'm trying to figure out how do we really triangulate and see what's really happening, because this is just one snapshot in time in February without any breaks. Well, I think there's one day off in February, something like that. So that's, not that I'm dismissing the data at all, but we're really looking for context and really trying to understand, because we've given this survey during this particular time period because that's just when we gave it. And, when we used to give all of these other drug use and all of that that's just kind of our window of time. So we're trying to figure this out, but I would say overwhelmingly that our system is trying to be very responsive to kids that we who don't feel connected, especially our non-binary transgender kids.
Yeah, and I do believe we care. I mean, just to be clear, I'm not saying that we don't care, but clearly there's also reflected here a disconnect between our desire to be connecting to all of our students and our students' belief that they are connected. So somehow we need to connect that. Anyway, that's the main point there. And then
Can I
on the
just say,
performance-
I remember us having quite a conversation about this. Like, what does it mean? What does it mean? And how do we ask the question? Do students really understand what we're talking about? And I think these numbers just reflect how important our work is. And I've said too, we're not perfect. We've got some ways to go. This helps drive our work when we see which students are not feeling like they're a part of things here, and just being very clear about what we mean when we say, do students feel like they belong?
Yeah. It makes me think that if you're a student who responds to the survey, that you're, in the yellow on the bottom, I think it is, where you're not, like, I am unhappy or I'm not connected. I feel like there should be a further box. If you check this, let us know what we can do, raise your hand so we can come find you, kind of thing, I don't know.
Do they have opportunities to elaborate or talk on the survey?
No, it's not for that.
Because it's anonymous, I mean,
Right, it
I
is
assume.
anonymous.
But I don't know, maybe we can think about that. Anyway, my second point was on the academic side of things, that it seems to me the opportunity in this area is that freshman on track piece, and that comes up in that extraordinarily long school report card, and it's somewhere like in the middle. But freshman on track, to me, is, we have to, and I know we are, I know we do focus, but we need to be all over it, because there's 10% of our students who are not on track, and we need to grab them and get them on track, doing whatever it takes. Because those are the ones that are going to be, that drive all the other data that follows. So it seems to me, and that's why they've included it in the school report card, that's why it's included as a measure and everything, because we all know if you don't get on track at the beginning that you're going to fall off. And so I will also tie this up a little bit with Cradle to Career, because I see that we have a member of the administrative team of Cradle to Career here with us at our meeting. Hi, Ms. Brandy Effiam. And this is why it's important that we are connected with District 65, because these freshmen come in the door and we only have them for a tiny little bit of time. And what they're coming in the door with is whatever they got in District 65, or in a very small number of cases from some other district entirely, or a different country entirely. I'm going to reiterate that if Cradle to Career is ever going to succeed, we need to have that kind of partnership. I'm just slipping this in an area that is not yours, I know. But I really want to make that point, because when we started with the Cradle to Career effort, it was all about this. It was all about working these two districts together and making sure that the students that we share in our community come here knowing how to read at grade level, so that we can then do the necessary things within our own district to advance them to graduation and a productive life beyond. And we still need to keep talking about that, and it's not on us alone. It's on the other district here in our community as well.
I just wanted to add briefly, because you had talked about connectedness, and rightfully so, that it's one of the things that I think is our challenge is how are we doing that from a school-wide perspective, and how are we doing it student by student by student, right? And so while we have an anonymous survey, there are other ways that students do a phenomenal job of bringing students forward when they're concerned. So that's, I think, just one of the ways I wanted to offer up. Also, we make sure that students get the constant reminders, even through the survey, of if you want to get connected, right, here's some steps. If you want to connect a friend right now, this is how to do it. And those are those steps that I believe that we take. And so I'll just offer, this is my moment of happiness this morning. I started out by walking into our alt school, which doesn't start at 8 a.m. because it's a different schedule to provide supports for students. We had students in AM support in our alt school program that doesn't officially start till 9 a.m. because they wanted to get ahead. And specifically students who've identified, okay, what were my barriers previously for not feeling like I belong, and now I'm feeling like I belong. So, I agree, and I think there's that moment by moment. Yeah.
Pat?
So back to the student well-being slides, the three that disaggregate with race, ethnicity, and gender. Despite the fact that we have, work to do, what I noticed was that in each of the three slides, males were the best of the three when you compare female, male, and non-binary transgender. And I'm just wondering if you have any color on that and what that means. Because one of the things that made me think about is we've focused a lot in the last few years on black male students, and I was wondering if some of this is showing that work. And I don't know if we can connect those dots, but I guess I'm just curious if there's any even speculation as to why males, despite the fact that we still have room to grow and go, seem to be a little better off than some of our other students. Okay. Yeah. So you don't have a sense of disaggregated by race and ethnicity within gender? That is, like, you didn't see that even, I know it's not in the report, but is that something you
Right.
saw and kind of got a sense of, or not
We
even?
do look at that, and I have not looked back at that, so I can't answer your questions off the
That's-
top of my head.
That's
But I will
okay.
go back and look at it.
Yeah, and I guess
Yeah.
I just wonder if you do look at it, if you can make some connections to what is working. I mean, these aren't huge, it's not like they're leaps and bounds ahead of females and non-binary transgender students, but I don't know, maybe there's something positive there that you can suss out.
Yeah,
So,
I'll look back. Thank you.
Hi, my question was already answered, but I just wanted to say thank you for disaggregating some of this data by multilingual learners and by non-binary transgender students where you're able to. I think it's really important that we do have a snapshot of those subcategories, so thank you for that. I did have one quick question. How many or what percentage of students actually filled out the well-being climate survey?
We have about 80% every year.
Oh, that's great. That's a
We
good
have a
number.
Pretty good number.
Good. Thank you.
But, I mean, there's always, right, we always wish it was 100,
Right.
and maybe some of the students that are harder to get to, or some that aren't there, aren't as connected. So we are mindful, we talk about that all the time, but overall 80%.
Okay. Great.
Mira?
Well, I think Monique, and then Monique.
Okay. Yeah, that was my question. I wanted to know how many students filled it out. But I think also what I noticed that sort of just popped out, and this is definitely not in every category, but in most categories, our students of color are performing less as a group. And I know you highlighted that under the well-being and climate survey, students of color and our non-binary, transgender students there, but in every category. I just want
And
that.
particularly our black kids.
Particularly our black kids, and then our Hispanic, Latinx.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And then our 2 or more races. So, I mean, yes, our black students are, for lack of a better word, because I hate using this word, but they're at the bottom consistently still. And they are being outperformed consistently. And so when I look at that, and that's not every black student, I want to be clear on that, but as a whole, yes, the unweighted GPA class, they're close to 2.8, but they're not there, so, and even in that category, they are, so, that needs to just, I don't know, we need to marinate in that for a while because it's not good. Still. So I know we're always chasing this and trying to figure this out, but I'm looking at it with another lens attached and just trying to figure out how we use this data to continue to push and to be more persistent in addressing that. And I don't know if it's connected. I don't know if those that are not feeling connected or are saying that they don't feel like they belong here are the same ones underperforming. I don't know that, but there's something there. Oh, that's it.
I think it's an important, it's an important point to make. This is the predictability of academic performance based on race. This is what we're talking about in our first goal. And it's still there. We've certainly not accomplished this, or we've not, I mean, this is, as I said earlier, this is the work that we have to do. So, thank you for highlighting that, Monique, and making note that it is in every area. Don't want to run over it too fast.
Well, that's kind of some of where my mind was as well. And I always thank you for your report. I don't mean to just jump in. So a couple of my questions come from a place of ignorance. But before I get there, I just want to say that I think it would be interesting. I know these are anonymous, but perhaps we could begin to couple GPA and report of belonging and connectedness. Although I will also offer that I think there's another indicator in there that we're missing, but we'll come to that later. Just to tease out some of this that you're getting at. And then my question that comes out of ignorance is, so we have kids who go to Oakdale or Tech Campus, right? Who get, yes?
Do you mean dual credit, or do you mean
Well,
like
dual
leave
credit.
and go? We don't send any kids to Oakton,
And we don't send any kids, so the dual credit that they achieve are all here.
all here in-house.
And all of those are weighted? Right, okay. And so then my thought would be, let me go back. Did you disaggregate those numbers? Yes. Okay, so again, I would think about how those are tied to, because the design of that, right, is so that all of our kids have that career and college readiness, but also are able to not get pigeonholed and to have more opportunities. So I just, if it's playing out and that's our lagging indicator, then what's the leading being then belonging or, so I'm just trying to kind of look at the trajectory of the things that we're doing to create the conditions for success, and are they in fact doing that? So I was just trying to kind of think through that a little bit. I'll leave that for a moment.
Did you, was there a point you were going to make about like something else that you think?
Yeah.
Because I'm totally open to all feedback.
Well, I think it's, and thank you. I think where I'm going with that is we're going to talk a little bit about what we experienced at Summit and my thoughts around belonging and connectedness are insufficient, or not my thoughts around it, but that being a leading indicator I think is insufficient. I think we're actually measuring possibly the wrong thing. So, but that isn't in your, I mean, it's in your control, but not. It's, I think, a bigger systemic issue. So hopefully you'll be here for part of that discussion, but it's not really appropriate for the report. Yeah, thank you, though.
Leah?
So I think I have more of a comment than a question, but I think I wanted to, in the previous report, I too quickly brought in the freshmen on track, but I just wanted to explain that I'm not trying to come from a place of negativity, but also I think that we have to maintain a sense of urgency. Does that make sense? So I think that what really jumped out, and I'm sorry to go ahead again, but when we talk about the state report card, spoiler, on a lot of these numbers, we're way better than the state averages. I mean, there's a lot, that's something to be happy about. That's something that's really positive. But it's when you look at, when you look at the overall numbers, in almost everything, we're above the state average. But when you break it down by race and ethnicity, students with an IEP, multilingual learners, free and reduced lunch, then you see, that while we're still better than the state, I don't want to just pay attention to what the rest of the state. We want to do the best we can here for our students. And I think that just, I guess this is my long way of saying, that's why I think that our focus on equity is so important and so urgent, because while we can take some, I don't know what the word is, we can feel positive about the strides we've made because we have made strides. It's kind of like when you look at that data, for instance, about advanced coursework. This is so much different than in the past. But then you look at the students who took specifically at least one dual credit AP or Project Lead the Way, and for African American Black students, it's 50%. And for all the other categories, it's 70, 73, 92, 92. As Monique pointed out, the GPA, it's near 2.8, but it's 2.77 for Black students. You look at the freshmen on track, and the thing that had jumped out for me on the opening in school report was that it seemed like last year was sort of an off year. Of all of their numbers were pretty consistent in terms of each year the number of freshmen on track, but there seemed a little spike last year, and I just looked at compared to comparing the number of Black students to the class size, and it was 15%. So that is not to take away, and in fact, I think it's an opportunity for us to share what we are doing, because I think we're doing a ton, but it makes what we're doing so important, because those are still pretty alarming numbers. That's all.
Thank you, I agree with you completely. Anybody else, Pat?
Well, I actually have a question for Mira. I wanted to understand when you said measuring belonging is the wrong indicator. Can you?
I don't want to speak with Mira, but I wrote from belonging to mattering. I think that's what you were talking about.
Oh, okay, that's fine. If that's what yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
I got that too.
Okay. You didn't finish the sentence, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you.
I think that was her report out. She was going to say that.
I bet you were going to say that later, yes. You spoiled it. But we could explain that later.
And well, I think all of this data tonight shows us that the district goals that you adopted are still very
Absolutely.
relevant. And certainly there is no single story in this data. There is a couple definitely trends here. But we still have work to do in combating the disparities by race in this district.
And Carrie, you're just the messenger. Know that, right? So without this information, we couldn't justify the work we're doing, so.
And I appreciate that,
arguably
too.
a co-conspirator, because you write these and write the surveys. So that's where I hope you, no pressure, do hang out, because I think we could construct some different items to measure things in a different way, yeah.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Thank you for letting me know, because I'm always looking to improve what we have and see how it's like a hard nut to crack, right? To how do we get to what this really means? So, yeah, absolutely. And I'm always going to try and be transparent in providing the data for you. And even though I go through it quickly in the highlights, I try to give you a lot of details in the report to get to the good and some of the bad. That's not that where we want to work on, so.
Thank you.
All right. That's your turn.
All right, Illinois report card. We're going to keep it simple because I don't want to, we've talked a lot about data. I know that Leah's done a deep dive into the school report card. Me too. Actually, what I would encourage all board members to do is to look at the interactive report card online. It's very interesting. It's user-friendly. There's a wealth of information in there. There's scattergrams where you can see how ETHS compares to like Nutrier, things like that. You can do, it's interactive. It's kind of fun. Cut to the chase, we're commendable. Same designation we've had pretty much since these 4 ratings began. They're dictated by percentages, top 10% of schools, including all magnet schools and magnet dist, all that stuff is, figured into the exemplary. Commendable is the next layer. Then you have targeted and comprehensive. All right. Here you have the Illinois report card. I apologize, but if you follow along in your packet, you can see what that is. That basically shows the district English language arts scores. 2023 is at the top, and you'll see that there's more green than in 2022, which we predicted would be the worst year for test scores, and it seems to bear out. You see the ELA, SAT broken out by racial demographic. If you remember back in the winter, we did a report on mathematics, and we said that this tracks to the IAR, which is taken in 8th grade, that establishes sort of the cohort data, and this tracks very closely to this cohort's 8th grade IAR data, which is the standardized test. It's the SAT for 8th grade. And you'll see that math is still an area of great need. We had a comment earlier about the pandemic, and I think that's right for a lot of things. For math instruction, I think it's taken a lot to dig out. And one of the things, I'll just get to the math. Here's the math. You see it's rebounded a little bit. It's not near where it was pre-pandemic. It's at the top there, district. And then here it is broken out by race. One of the things you need to know is that we haven't seen the growth in students there are a lot of students on that list in the orange and on those charts in the orange and the light orange that have significant algebra issues and challenges. We are redoing our freshman placement. What we found in working with our teachers over the last couple of years is that students who are placing into our geometry with support class in 9th grade, we're really taking algebra in that support period. And we were doing a disservice by teaching it concurrently with geometry for students in that group. It's about 60, 70 kids. That group will now be placed in algebra with 2 teachers in the room. It'll also make room for an elective period for students in that group. So that's a plus on that side. More elective, more reason to come to school, more reason to engage, as opposed to a double period math. If you're not interested, if you're struggling in math, it's not a good recipe for a 9th grader. I see Leah nodding her head because she knows. And I should have listened. But I'm listening now. So that's what we're doing for math. Here's a scattergram, and I've only chose 2 scattergrams to show y'all. But I think these are 2 interesting ones. 2, right, Mark? 2. I got 2. I got 2. Because I love scattergrams. So the scattergram is. This is not the interactive one. No, this is not the interactive one. This is not interactive. So that blue square there, that's ETHS, and that's our English Language Arts SAT exceeds growth. The top line there is what would be considered average growth on this test. So we exceeded average growth. All those other little dots around us, all over there, are all different high schools in Illinois. So that kind of positions us overall. We're exceeding growth. I look at this as in terms of like, how are we growing, right, relative to previous years. So we're doing all right. I'm not going to comment on who those schools are around us. Here's math. So math, we're still above the line. We're showing we're above the growth line, so that's good. But again, there's schools around us in terms of our SAT meets exceeds growth. Question?
That's the entire population of our students. It's not disaggregated.
This is the entire population of all of Illinois high school students.
Right. So wouldn't it
And this is
be-
not, I know what you're going to ask. Go ahead, ask. It's not disaggregatable because the folks who made this did not have it. We can't disaggregate this information on this chart in terms of the growth model. So I can't look at what our growth is for say, black students or say Hispanic students. I do have scattergrams though that tell us how our white students are doing compared to white students in other districts, black students and
That, right,
Latinos.
not growth, but,
How they're actually doing. I have that.
and that would be fascinating to see because there are kids who are.
Okay, so we got you. Funny you should mention that. Hid behind the 2 question slides was just this answer. So here's our English Language Arts SAT for white students, and this is a scatter plot. And again, you see where it says state average, that's just the demographic average. So what that says essentially is that as a state, we have, let me just pull it up on my computer so I can see it. I can explain it better. Okay, so you have the state average state is about 48% white enrollment. That's what that line is right there, that vertical line. The red triangle is ETHS for white student achievement in English language arts. To the left and up above us are magnet schools. And if it were online, you could go and hover over and it'll actually name those schools. And to the right of us, you'll see like Stevenson and New Trier. But again, it's the proficiency is where, is the access that puts us very high for that group. You get it? Got it? We good?
Can I just interject one small point about that? For anybody who is worrying 12 or 14 years ago about what we were doing with our classes here at ETHS, and I'll call out the white parents in particular, who were expressing concern about the future of their white kids' academic abilities. This slide says it all. And that's all I want to say. Relax, white parents.
I think that's such a good point.
Don't
and I-
relax, be vigilant, but,
I really,
yeah.
yeah.
Be
Gretchen,
vigilant, but
I really appreciate you making that point.
let's not lose
Appreciate
it.
Appreciate you making that
Yeah,
point.
this is really important to,
We'll,
and can you send us we don't have these slides. Can you send us?
oh
the
yeah, I'll
link?
send them to you. Do you want me to just quickly
you can
click
look
through the
these up.
rest of them?
Everybody
They're all
should look 'em
available
up
on the
online.
interactive report card.
Yeah.
Just send it to us.
You want me to link? I'll send you the
Yes.
link.
Yeah.
All right. Should I click through them?
Give us a couple more.
Okay, so here's black students ELA to the left. So the average is about 18% black student enrollment across the state. That's that line, that vertical line you see there. To the triangle is ETHS. To the left of ETHS are predominantly, particularly when you get to the left of that line, those are predominantly, white, very white heavy districts. To the right are more districts with higher percentages of black students. And then you see ETHS is the red triangle. I'm going to leave inferences for when you compare the tables, but I'm just leaving it there just as informational, okay? The next slide, ready for me to go on? The next slide represents our Hispanic Latinx scatter plot. What I like to say is this indicates work to do within ETHS as compared to other districts. So we would look, this is a good opportunity to compare yourself to other districts and see what other places are doing with similar demographics, potentially, not exactly, because no one has exactly our demographic makeup. If I put SATs for white student scatter plot, these kind of mirror, right, what you saw with the ELA. And math is really, is a real challenge. Is a real challenge for students at ETHS, and it looks like across Illinois. But there's work to be done. I wanted to share this with you. I could break this out. If you go online, you can break this out by free reduced lunch. You can break this out by IEP. You can break this by every student group. And you can, as long as there's enough students in the group, that makes sense for reporting purposes. And you can really find out. I've shared this with the department chair team. I've shared this with our vision casting group. We looked at this scatter plots last year to kind of say, okay, acknowledging the origins of this measure, right? It was a structured, it's a complicated measure that is really designed to do, I'm just going to say it, it's designed to do that. The SAT its origin story was designed to put white students and white folks relative to other folks and to have them have a numerical sort of way to do that. And that's sort of the origin stories. It goes back to the origins of the IQ testing, eugenics movement, and all that. But you see it at work when you just look at their scatter plots in Illinois. It kind of tells that same story. Anyway, questions?
So the last thing you said kind of speaks to what I was about to ask or comment on, which is, is the SAT a good measure? What kind of measure truly is the SAT for language arts and math as compared to what students are doing in their classes and teaching in our classes according to the state standards,
Yeah.
Is it the right measure? So I have problems with that. But that said, I'm going to just, yes, you caught me. I did a deep dive into the data. But I just wanted to say
I don't know if I have
again
answers if you went that deep.
I looked at this, and overall, in every subgroup, we do better than the state when you measure us overall.
Yes.
But there's always a discrepancy within our own data that is really significant between white and, for the most part, Asian, and, on the other side, Black, brown students, students with IEPs, multilingual students, low-income students, and homeless students. And I just wanted to share, because I added the numbers, 3 sets of numbers. One, you can partially meet, approach standards, meet or exceed. So the lower categories are partially meet and approaching. And Black students in ELA, that's 77% partially meet or approach, and 87% in math. That's not good. Latinx, it's 75% partially meet or only approach standards in ELA, 80% in math. And lastly, for English learners, and they're learning English, but 94% only partially meet or approach standards, but even in math, 94% are in those lower categories for math.
That's exactly the work. Sean, the thing that's really just, really hits is that Sean Reardon came out here about 8 years ago and did a presentation at YOU, and then he did it at FAN, and I think he may have done it. I know several board members attended that session, especially that we had a private session, I think, over at YOU. And he kind of showed this at Evanston schools. He was talking about the K-8 experience because he didn't have the high school data, but the high school data mirrors essentially the K-8 data. But yes, this is the work. And the work is to raise and to figure out, and also maybe to figure out different ways to measure. I don't know how viable a measure the SAT is going to be in 5 years, in 4 years, in 3 years, just overall as a metric, because test optional and all those things that fit into it, because it's very difficult to give a high school test and say this is about achievement, this is about how you're doing, and not have any external reward attached to it, which is like, it used to be, take the ACT, it's the ticket to college, you get scholarships for having a high ACT score, same with the SAT, and now it's become, a lot of schools are test optional, some are test blind, and that reduces that sort of, maybe that particular incentive. Plus, the numbers were always weird to begin with because there were test prep companies and independent tutors. So you do get sort of, it's a measure of privilege potentially. It's a measure of white privilege potentially. What do you replace that with? I mean, I'd love to replace it with grades, but that's fraught with sort of challenges too when we look at those GPA calculations. I would like to share with the board when we do our AP report, some predictive analysis on grades and advanced placement and AP outcomes. And that tells a counter narrative. That actually tells you a story, and I have the numbers to back it up, that our black and brown students get Bs in AP classes, but they have shown over the last 10 years, right? Just about white students predominantly get As. If you're going to get a B, chances are you're black or you're Latino. And so lower grades, but yet the growth on the AP exams, three scores of 3, 4, and 5, our black students and Latinos are showing those gains, and white students have gone down. Not precipitously, but they've gone down. And it's not a function, some people say, oh, well, that's a function of kids not taking the test anymore. No, we only looked at kids who took the test and back-mapped that. So that's out of there. I took that out right away. Because I know how I think, I know how people think, and I know how to construct sort of that, do this kind of constructs. So that's what we found with that.
So in another report, you're saying.
In another
black
report, we're going to
kids.
take a deep dive into what that is and that correlation, which I think is helpful and speaks to the work. But that's just, thank you, Leah, for raising that. Thank you.
And I also just kind of want to say for the record that when we look at freshmen on track, we look at this data tonight, I do want to assure the board that the administration is and has a number of plans in place that we are vetting through the staff to address the very things that we're talking about tonight in a new way. Right? Not the same old stuff we've been doing, right? We've got new ideas, new thoughts, new strategies, new programs, new approaches to address this systemically that you all will be hearing about. I almost want to say, just like I told you some years ago, like we've got stuff coming that's pretty big.
Yeah.
We've got stuff coming that's pretty big. So stay tuned.
I just remember the last time you said that. Things kind of got really big. So I'm really glad to hear that. Really excited.
I just want to say, I think that's great. I also think that what you both just talked about in terms of black and brown students doing better 3s, 4s, and 5s, we should be looking at what we are doing. I know you are, so but really looking and digging deep into what we are doing that's working. And for all of these things, as I was listening to this conversation, I feel like there's something there, there's something there. What are we doing to connect the dots? And again, I'm speaking to the choir, but I think, it's good that we have the consistency of the team here, that you all know this data and you know what you've been doing over time. And I just really encourage you not to reinvent the wheel, but to really reinvent it where it needs to be, clearly, but also really dig into some of this stuff and try to unpack, like that number I mentioned about the males feeling better connected. Why? Who are they? What are we doing that's making them feel that way? Like, really peel the onion to some of these things, because I do think that we've done a lot of work, and some of it's working. And so we just have to kind of figure out why and who and how and try to figure that out for a more expansive group of students. So again, I know you know this, but I think it's really important to say out loud that we don't have to start over. We do a lot of really good things here. What are they? Who's being helped? And how do we learn from them to help others? So.
Thank you.
And then I would just add, because I do have faith in us, I'm kind of shook, and I have looked at some of our report card data, but somehow seeing it up on the screen, it should be illegal, the conditions of our students. And what I'm thinking about is, with our scatter plots, and we can see which schools where we do have students who are low income or students who are experiencing homelessness or who are born into whatever race who are succeeding, and to figure out what's happening in those districts so that we can bring some of that back to ours, because obviously the conditions, not just in our school, but as to the point of our entire 202 and 65 are creating those scores. I mean, it's just, it's like, it's kind of unbelievable, and yet it's not, because I'm not naive. I know the country and the situation we're in, but there are districts that are getting it right for these different groups. So I think we could learn. I think we could visit. What's that?
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I just wonder, when you start to look at some of the higher achieving districts with, to the left, right? These are kids who are theoretically doing better than our kids.
I mean, we can't look at Magnet, but we can look at districts where it's.
Yeah, no, I
neighborhood
totally
schools.
agree with you. I wasn't at all going against what you were saying. I'm just saying, what are the conditions? Are there small numbers of African-American students in those districts? Are they magnet schools where they're plumbing out kids, and being very strategic about who they allow into their schools? That's all I meant. I hear you, and you're right. We don't know everything, and we should look to our colleagues.
There are regular old public schools
Yeah.
in which we have populations, each one of those subpopulations achieving at a higher rate than ours.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And they're not Magnet, and they're not,
Well, that's what we would look for,
tiny.
right? That's
Yeah.
what we would, that's the information we would gather.
And it would be
What
interesting.
are the schools like? What are the parameters? Peter, I really appreciate you bringing up Sean Reardon, because I think about that session all the time, that Evanston is probably one of the best places, if not the best, school districts for white students. And you just showed us that that was true 8 years ago, and it's true now. So that is pretty amazing.
And the flip side to that is it's questionable for Black students.
Of course.
I mean, and I think that is the reality we're in, because we are a very challenging community. I mean, you just look around the community and you can tell that Evanston is not everything for everyone that lives in Evanston. And of course, they all meet here, right? So we're faced with that reality in our community. And so I think that is the challenge, a big challenge that we have. It is a heavily resourced community, and yet and still, like I think that other book we read, it's not utopia for everyone.
Right.
Especially for our students of color. So, again, it's just a great opportunity for some big things to come.
Some big things to come, and we can't do it alone.
Right.
Right.
Which is why Goal 4 is so important.
Yeah,
Yes,
And thank you for mentioning
Right.
that earlier.
definitely.
that is true. Can't do it
Definitely.
alone.
All right, any other comments or questions from board? Thank you for bringing this forth.
Yeah.
This is really helpful. Thank you. This is what we have to stay with.
Yeah, good dialogue.
All right. Get back to my agenda. Okay, the next item is the Summit for Courageous Conversations. What I'll say is, I think this is so consistent with the conversation we've been having so far. The sequence couldn't be better for us. So 6 of our 7 board members attended the summit in Austin last week. Assistant superintendent and superintendent attended. And I've asked you if you choose to talk a little bit about your experience there. I think I'll wait and go last. So who would like to start? Leah?
Okay. I've been to summits before, and for this summit, there were a few things that stuck out for me that I just was thinking about a lot afterwards. And one was that we had heard a speaker who is a psychology or psychiatry professor at Harvard.
Yes.
Correct me?
Yes.
Anyway, I think the point that there is, scientifically, there's transgenerational trauma that is real and that goes, and that people deal with. The point, though, against that juxtaposed to that there's also can be transgenerational healing was really powerful to me. And the work that we do to work for racial equity and equity in general, that that hope is a big part of that. And we have to know that you can work for healing and that can have a profound effect and a generational effect. And the other thing I was going to say is we did hear from the 3 Black women who it was intergenerational. And I thought Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X, and the point that was made that there can be great harm done in a day. For instance, you could have Roe versus Wade turned over, or voting rights, something could be passed, and with the passing of a law, people don't have the same voting rights they did. And yet, sometimes there's a tendency from the older generations to say change takes time, and that why does the change for positive take time, but the negative can happen just like that? And that speaks to, I brought up the word urgency before, but that how important the work for equity is and how urgent it is, and how when the work that some of us who might be older and more veterans in education are doing, to remember that what we're doing and the decisions we're making, the people who are going to have to live that are the youth and the Generation Z. They're going to live based on our decisions and the consequences of those. So those were things that really stuck out to me at the conference, at the summit.
Thank you. Thank you, Leah. Who's next? Liz?
Oh, sure. I have some thoughts. As Pat said, 6 board members and our top 2 administrators attended Courageous Conversations in Austin. We joined 700 educators from all over the country to sit in our discomfort and have conversations about race. Together, we built the emotional capacity to have difficult conversations in interracial spaces with the intention of not producing more racial harm in the process. Some of the classes available to us were things like teaching beautiful, brilliant Black students, or working with whiteness, allyship, and decentering, or healing racial habits of harm through mindfulness. And it was just the kind of learning that I've been looking for. Courageous Conversations is an institution that prioritizes the voices of BIPOC folks, so I got to witness Black and brown speakers, poets, authors, singers, educators, students, and others shine while we were together for 5 days. Wow, what a privilege as a white person to learn from that greatness. I feel very humbled to have been among the interracial groups who shared their fears, loves, hopes, and vulnerabilities, and yes, their pain as well. People were willing to bring their most authentic selves to the space so that we could all grow together. I had the opportunity to be in beautiful interracial and intraracial spaces to listen and to learn from one another. I took to heart the feedback that I heard from our BIPOC members about how a lack of vulnerability and a low affect often shows up in whiteness. And I heard that and I felt it and I took it to heart. These are the kinds of things that inform my school board work and my personal work. The ETHS folks were able to present on our own equity journey so that others can learn from us, confront their resistance, and achieve similar outcomes in their own spaces. I went to Summit in a professional capacity to increase my own racial awareness so that I can better serve our BIPOC students here at ETHS. But it quickly turned personal, as the courageous conversations are meant to be. I found myself thinking about my own Black son as I listened to the joys and sorrows of my fellow Black and brown brothers and sisters, and how I, as a white parent, can best honor my son, his race, his culture, his family, and his very essence. I want him to be seen, heard, valued, and I want him to belong. And then, of course, I had to start thinking about our students at ETHS, because I want the very same for every one of them. Because we are all interconnected and we all share our humanity. I just want to express my gratitude for having the opportunity to attend Summit and do this kind of work for our students and for the larger community. I look forward to it every year because it feels like a personal growth spurt for me time and again. And I'm lucky to be a part of ETHS because we actually prioritize this racial equity work. Someone actually asked me at Summit if ETHS has receipts for the outcomes that resulted from our equity work. And I said, we definitely have the receipts. And I'm happy to tell you all about it.
Thank you, Liz. Anybody else?
Yeah, right, like, Summit every year is so amazing, and I love that my worlds come together here and in my school, other school district. So the theme of We Hold These Truths was fascinating and a challenge, and hearing from Kimberly Crenshaw and then Dr. Joseph and Dr. AMC, and could these truths be suppressible, kind of kept coming up, and what we have to do to not suppress our truths was, in a sense, a challenge, that I think, or an invite. And so when Dr. Joseph said there's a freedom beyond emancipation that is to be taken, not just given, I kept thinking about, like, what are our students telling us that they want? How is it that they're taking whatever it may be that is evidence of us not giving them enough? And I don't have the answer to that, but I think about that in the data. There was another piece that was put out there in the sense of how we might work to co-construct or redefine what student success means. And that's where that mattering came up for me over and over again. So I want to look at, college and career readiness and grades as those lagging metrics or indicators, but what are the conditions necessary? And that's where, when Dr. AMC talked about mattering, that it just blew my mind. I was like, that's it. What does it feel like to be valued in our school? So not just that you belong to a club or that you connect, but that you actually matter. I would start asking kids in a classroom, do you all know each other's names? Can the lesson go on without you? What does it mean to be valued in a classroom? Do your thoughts help move the lesson forward? That's the work of the practitioner, to make sure that students believe that their presence and their thinking actually matters to the curriculum. So I have all kinds of thoughts there. And then I thought about mattering being the answer to the challenge of we have yet to produce a moral language that says this oppression cannot happen. Wow, our language is insufficient to stop us from doing the oppressive acts that we do in our schools. What an amazing moment to think about. So if we used language like mattering, could that, in a sense, be a new architectural tool to help us build the conditions that are necessary to then stop the oppression? In the end, for me, so much of this is about consciousness and not about numbers, not about labels. We have this many kids here that I would love to actually start talking more about staff and consciousness, because we're always putting our kids up and we wonder, and we don't want to blame them, but yet those are the numbers that we're always looking at. So where could we kind of shift ourselves? And lastly, I'm always thinking about this continuum, so my push is that two things, and this is kind of just me being, I don't know, full of myself, I guess, but it's not necessarily both and, it's and both. So if you just listen to those words, there's a little bit of a change there. And we're moving from woke, this idea of woke, to alive. And so how do our kids, how do our staff feel alive? To me, that's what mattering is. And so that's kind of the things that came up for me while I was at Summit, and what I wanted to share. So thank you.
Thank you. Pat?
Well, first, I feel so lucky to be able to attend Summit, and I have before, and I'm grateful to Pat and Marcus and just prioritizing this work among the board as well as our staff. And I think they're always great, but for some reason this year just really had a very powerful impact on me. And I think it was the Beyond Diversity 3 session that really kind of kicked it off for me. But I think that this deep and sustained focus to look inward regarding issues of race, racism, racial equity is extremely powerful. And at Summit, we engage in that deep reflection, and then we share it with others, and then we look at how all of this internal and personal really applies to the work of our school board and the work we do here, our personal and professional lives, and so forth. I think that the sessions were, there were all different kinds of sessions, as others have pointed out, that looked at the power and presence and impact of whiteness, that look at how to manage conflict in the workplace, or even for women of color and black women and white women to have conversations. And that really just, on that personal level, as you're doing this work, you're really exploring and clarifying your own purpose, and specifically your own personal racial equity purpose. And as a white person, I think this deep focus and work continues to be transformational and give me a really powerful lens to look through as I do the work on this board and really everything I do. The work we did at Summit gives you these tools, and you continue, even though I'm very familiar with these tools, I think you deepen your understanding of how to use these tools to support the work we do, including our newly adopted goals. Because if we are saying that we're an anti-racist organization, and that's one of our goals, we really have to do that work in order to make it so, to ensure that our students' well-being and success is attended to. And that applies to all of our students. I think these courageous conversation tools are very powerful. They support conversations that dig deeper into race and racism and equity and what all of these mean in our schools and in our community. And in my experience, many white people in our community really do want to make progress in advancing true racial equity, but they don't know what that looks like, or they don't know how to engage in meaningful work and conversations to achieve it. And I very much encourage, white people in our community to look to Courageous Conversations for help in this. There's books that Glenn Singleton has written, and they're terrific and really spell out a lot of the tools and a lot of the examples to help you understand those tools. Beyond Diversity is offered in Evanston all the time, and if you're able to do that, to participate in that session. And then use the tools that you learn to have these hard but important conversations with others in the community, especially other white people. Because as a white person, I'm incredibly grateful to my friends and colleagues of color who've supported my racial equity journey, but we can't rely on people of color to both live the impact of racism and then constantly be teaching the white people all about it. So I think as white people, we need to do our own work. And as a white person who cares deeply about our community, particularly our young people, and the community and the world that we're going to leave them, I'm really here to engage in those conversations and to support others who are willing and interested in having courageous conversations. So thank you. This was, as always, an amazing experience, and I appreciate being able to go.
Thank you, Pat. Monique?
Yeah, so I also think that the experience with Beyond Diversity 3 set the tone for me for the conference. And I always, as a Black woman, I have to center myself before I go to any race summit or diversity training or meeting with a white woman or, you know, whatever it might be. I have to be grounded. You know, I have to be grounded, and that's just the matter of a fact. So this conference, for whatever this time, and I've been going since I've been on the board, forced me to look inward and to stay there. And so it required that I'm reminded of the purpose. I'm reminded of how heavy and hard but necessary this work is. I'm reminded what burnout might look like. I'm reminded that there was one conference or one workshop I went to called Spiritual Aspects of Vulnerability, but integrity in the conversation, in the protocol, with yourself, and forgiveness, just around maybe not the outcome being what it should or what you want it to be. And the courageousness in having hard conversations. So I really just did some deep thinking and every workshop I was in, it just seemed like they all fit together without me even knowing that they were going to fit together that way. And I think it was just very important for me during this time to be in that space because I do want to give up. I get tired of having these conversations. You know, I get tired of proving to people why it's important that race matters. You know, I get tired of looking at the same data and not seeing the movement and feeling bad as a Black woman that we have not progressed or our children have not progressed. I get tired of white people questioning if we're dumbing down our curriculum because you feel like we are or you have some issues with how we're teaching our children, our students. You know, I get tired of people saying that they live in Evanston for diversity, but you are still very deeply segregated in your thought and in the way you choose to live. That's tiring. And so this was important because above all the mess that we as adults bring into this world, our children are the result of our mess. And they're suffering because we can't have these conversations or we're afraid to have them. Or we think that something is being taken away or we're just ignorant to the fact that we all have to live on this earth together. So yes, it requires being centered. It requires being grounded. It requires picking ourselves up and saying, okay, we're going to go at this one more time. and we're going to keep showing up, and that's what we're doing. And so I know for none of us, the 6 that went, that this was an easy conference to go to. I know that it was not comfortable for any of us, but we stood in it, and for that, we became closer. So it's so worth it, because at the center of it all, it's about our students. I said this, and who knows, I may not run again, and whatever. I said it the first time I ran, and I'll say it again, that I absolutely needed the adults to vote for me in order for me to sit in this seat. But the decisions I make are not for you. They are for our students. And that will always be the case. And so I hope that with everything we say, every breath we take, everything that comes across our mind, that we have all our students, regardless if they live in your house or not, as the center of focus when we're thinking about the decisions we make and the things that we say. So if I'm here next year, I'll go again, and we'll probably still be tired. But I will keep showing up, because I think, Leah, you said something about with the data, it helps us determine what we're doing. This conference helps us determine how we get it done. And yeah, not just here, but in life. So I'll keep pushing until I can't anymore, but this is important for living beyond just filling a seat. So.
Thank you,
And
Monique.
I have my protocol, right?
There you go.
Right here.
You stayed in it. Keep it.
I stayed in it? I almost cried. I don't think that's one of them, so.
It's the feeling quadrant.
So I appreciate all of you and all of your reflections and your words. I guess what I want to say about Summit, if my voice holds up, is that it cannot be replicated. So as much as this is important for our community to hear, you have to experience it yourself. Everyone engaged, everyone working and looking inside, and really trying to understand and listen to others, thinking about their own districts, sharing, talking about their organizations. This is what it is. It's not a conference. It's not a go and sit and get. It's a go to work, to learn, and to be transformed. That's really what the experience is. And BD, Beyond Diversity, is important. The protocol is golden, but Beyond Diversity is not the end game. Beyond Diversity is the first step, and then there's more, and then there's more, and more yet. So yes, we try to sustain and stay engaged and deepen our work, but there's more, and that more is what it means to us. It's important to me for school board members to go for a number of reasons, because we as a board have stated and demonstrated our commitment to the equity work. We sat here and listened to these reports tonight, and we pulled from those reports exactly why we're doing this work. It was as if it was scripted, that these reports would be given on the night that we're talking about our experience at Summit. And that's important. We recognize that first goal. That's our goal. And we said many times tonight why it's so important that be the goal that we lead with. It's our responsibility to our students and to our community. That's what we signed up for. And yes, we need that collective experience. And those keynotes were really great, and they always are. But so much of this is so personal. And we can't do the institutional work until we do the personal work. So that keeps us there. And then, of course, as a district, we have a story to tell. So I appreciate all of you coming to help us tell that story in that session. And no other district, I believe, in this country has taken this on the way we have taken it on. And yet, as you can see, we still have so much work ahead of us. So as much as we do, we are imperfect. These numbers are humbling, yet these numbers really strengthen my resolve, as I believe it does for all of you. So that's really important. We're going to keep telling our story, because what I don't want is districts to think that we're so far ahead of them that they can't catch up or they can't do their work. You know, we're not telling districts, you got to do it like us. We are telling our story. We're gonna tell it again this weekend down and at the Hyatt. We'll tell it again as much as we can. We'll have other opportunities to tell our stories. And then finally, one very exciting experience is that we received an award at Summit, the Grace Lee Boggs Award, and I'm gonna just read a little bit. I think a lot of people don't know who, or didn't know who Grace Lee Boggs was. She spent her life advocating for civil rights, and much of her work was out of Detroit, I believe. She was Chinese. They called her Afro-Chinese. She was a friend of Malcolm X's and tried to convince him to run for Senate. I think I just love that story because I think, oh, that would have been a great race. She wrote a number of books with her husband, who was Black, and together they became two of the city's most notable activists. So to receive her award, it's called the Grace Lee Boggs Courageous Conversations Certification Partnership Award. And it's named after her because she is a fearless leader. She is an author. So for ETHS, this is an honor for us to receive this award. She approached her work with passion, as do we, courage, and a collaborative spirit. Great descriptors for us. So here's the award. I'll try not to keep it to myself. So that was my experience. Marcus, would you like to share more?
Well, thank you, all of you who were able to attend, and I just feel refreshed and honored and inspired as a superintendent to listen to board members share this kind of commitment to racial equity. And Monique, you're right, it's tiring, it's hard, you know, and but I think together, hopefully together, we can garner strength from one another to continue to run the race and be persistent and be relentless in our efforts to not just sit in the seat, as you said, but to be better human beings and be better people to those of us people who don't look like us, right? And so I just want to say thank you. Even for the discussion tonight, I really appreciate where everyone is coming from, and we will have more of a story to tell because I really still believe in ETHS and our commitment, our work, our staff, and our students. And I think we can continue to make more strides. And being using the protocol and the tools, I believe that in the conference. So thank you.
All right.
Do you want Taya?
Taya, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to join in with the gratitude of having been able to attend, and also to share publicly how many people, once they heard that I was from Evanston and our board had already presented, said, wait, I heard your board speak. You had your board members, and they all presented. People were astounded at the commitment that our board members represented and continue to represent. And frankly, sometimes I'm pretty astounded too by your collective effort, because, you know, it is tiring. And as a white woman, it's tiring for me. And I can only imagine what it's like for everyone on the journey, including our staff of color, our students of color, our leaders, and our board members. So I just really want to say thank you, and keeping it personal, local, and immediate for myself as well. This journey has been our most powerful effort, I believe, at ETHS, and I believe that we will make the shift, but it's also together. And one of our speakers, our keynote speakers, who I think several of us have referenced already, but Dr. Alicia Moreland Kapua was really talking about that trauma, but talking about organizational trauma in relation to racism. And I know we've experienced that here. And we can make that change, but we have to persist. And it's not with tenacity of doing the same thing over and over, but that the only way we can heal, and we mentioned this even in our communication last week, the only way we can heal the organizational trauma is by doing it together. Because we can't do rugged individualism. Thank you.
Again, I just want to thank all who attended, and we'll just continue our efforts, our commitment, collective commitment. We heard tonight why it's important, why it's so urgent to continue. All right, so I'm going to go forward in our agenda. The next item is comments from the public. Dr. Bavis, do we have any comments from the public?
We have no comments from the public.
Okay, the next item is FOIAs. We have a few.
We do have a few. We have 6. We have one from Dustin, one from Creasy, one from Farello, 2 from Yarav, and 1 from Rost. And the responses are in your packet.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Okay, those responses are in the packet. You're right. All right, the next item, board committee reports. Do we have any board committee reports? I think we've had any meetings. Coming up, okay, all right. Okay, now we're at the student board report. Nicole.
All right, hi everyone. It's been a month, like it usually has. Since the last time I've seen you all, November 1st has passed, so a lot of the stress in the air has kind of cleared, at least for the seniors, around college and post-high school planning. So we have recently, so October 30th, that was last Monday, right? Yeah, last Monday, a week ago, we had our Student Voice Forum, and so that was where almost, or around a quarter of the students at ETHS have came through to the hub, which is like kind of like a community space, and throughout the day of 8 periods, since it was a Wildcat Monday, they were able to talk to each other and to Dr. Campbell and Dr. Kinsey and some of the other administrators who were there, and Dr. Bavis as well, about some of the things that they're seeing at our school. So some of the main things have been concerning gender-neutral bathrooms, number of social workers we have here, affordable lunch plans slash options, and then also like that sense of belonging in school and also in advanced placement classrooms and honors classes, things of that nature. So in the student union, we have gone through kind of all this data. The data is kind of like casual looking. It's on pieces of butcher paper. So at each of the tables, we have this big piece of paper. So it's kind of like everyone sitting in a circle together, talking, and then writing things down. So it's not like any type of interrogation or anything or interview, or no one's like on edge. It's just people talking to other people. So another issue that has stood out from the forum data, and also just kind of what I've heard around word of mouth, has been conversations about school conflicts. So usually, like in these conversations, things that have been brought up have been like restorative practices and restorative justice, and mostly just like moving from that punitive approach that's so like traditional to more relationship-based ones. Again, this can connect back to what we were talking about earlier with that sense of belonging, whether that be self-reported or participation-based, especially for our Black and brown students and other students of color. Let's see. I have a lot of things for us today. Anyway, also another thing in the hub, we have had lots of different fairs and events. So like Aviation Career Day that was mentioned earlier, and the Military Visit Day, which is actually today. There's been a lot of opportunities for students to find out about post-high school planning, and also college visits are like weekly, so we have a good variety. Let's see. Okay, and then back to the Student Voice Forum. I've kind of jumped around a lot, but the Student Union has been looking at this data, and on the pieces of butcher paper, we've gone through a lot of responses. We're kind of like 75% of the way there. So within the next week or so, and after fall break, we're going to be ready to start reaching out to some of the administrators and community stakeholders at ETHS. And then one more thing. So Student Union and other student organizations like SOAR, which is Students Organized Against Racism, have been working with adults, teachers, other people, staff in the building about planning a anti-racist workshop, which is dedicated to making ETHS a more equitable space for students of color. And so some of the topics of discussion that have been planned include racism in Evanston, unconscious racism, and white privilege and white feminism. So these workshops are going to be, they are centering the invitation of white students to continue to disrupt white privilege at ETHS, which was kind of relating to our long conversation from earlier. I'd just like to say one more thing, which is recently I've been reflecting a lot, and it's very easy to hide behind like our veil of diversity here at ETHS, just because everyone from all 9 wards in Evanston all come here for high school. And so I really appreciate that all of the work that's going on behind the scenes. And I know that a lot of the students that go here also appreciate that work. And yeah, that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. All right, Dr. Campbell.
Thank you, Nicole. And I just want to take a moment to mentioned that Dr. Kinsey and I shared information with the community last week about our upcoming listening spaces. I'll briefly highlight the message tonight to be transparent about our efforts. For more than a month, our school community has been shaken by the violence of a global crisis, and we've heard from students, parents, staff, community members who are Palestinian, Israeli, Jewish, Muslim, and Arab. They have shared their fear, their frustration, their pain, their anger, and their suffering. And over the years, we've learned that if we expect to have a safe ETHS, an ETHS that learns and grows, one thing we must do is listen. Listening is an act of respect, compassion, and it's how we honor our humanity and the humanity of others. And so therefore, our next step is to create different listening spaces at ETHS to hear and understand the pain and the potential for hope that we carry in our school during such a difficult time. And there will be staff listening spaces and student listening spaces for people who have similar experiences to connect with each other and have meaningful conversation about the dehumanizing narratives that have impacted their group. And students and staff can check their email for more details. And as I've said before, that ETHS is a beautiful place, and we cannot build community and can't foster hope in the crisis in isolation. The best way that we do that is to do it together. So these listening spaces will offer us an opportunity where we will grow and we will learn, and so that the impacted communities can be heard while navigating so much pain. So stay tuned for more of that information. And finally, I want to wrap up with some happy news that we recently recognized 3 ETHS support staff members who were celebrated in October for all that they do for our WOW kids day in and day out, like the behind-the-scenes stuff that Nicole was just talking about. Caitlin McGee-Williams, Valerie Bonner, and Mercedes Fernandez are the 2023-24 recipients of the Gilbo Arsenault Spirit Award. Congratulations to those 3. So, and that concludes my report.
Lovely, thank you. And congratulations to those 3. Nice. Okay. So the next item is our public hearing. I am now officially convening the 2023 tax levy public hearing. This public hearing is being held due to the district's intent to adopt an aggregate levy 6.8% in excess of the 2022 levy. Ms. Williams, did you publish notice of this hearing?
Yes, Madam President. That was published on November 2nd, 2023.
Great. The proposed levy will provide funds to support the usual expenses of Evanston Township High School, an amount in excess of 6.8%. Overall increase is to be levied to ensure that our extension base increases by the tax cap of 5% plus any new property.
Yes, anyone wishing to present testimony may do so at this time.
Ms. Williams, do you have any comments?
I do. I'm actually going to go through a brief presentation, and then afterwards, if there are any questions, I can take those from the board. So just going to go over, this is our 2023 tax levy hearing. So this is the timeline of what happens in the process. As I mentioned before, on November 2nd, we did the publication for the Truth in Taxation legal notice in the newspaper. And then tonight, we're having the public hearing. And on December 11th, at our next board meeting, that's when the board would act on adopting the tax levy. And then we have until the final Tuesday of the month, or year really, to file with the Cook County Clerk's Office. So that date is December 26th. So prior to that, between the board meeting on December 11th and December 26th, I'll make my way to get that filed with the Cook County Clerk. So just a few terms, just to make sure that we're on the same page as we go through the presentation. And so, of course, we're familiar with some of these, like CPI, which is Consumer Price Index, that's measured from December to December. EAV is the Equalized Assessed Valuation. And so that's the total assessed value of property in the district. And then the first two, I just always like to make the distinction that the property tax levy is what we request. However, the extension is what we receive. And so when we get into a little further into the presentation, we start talking about the balloon levy and what we're requesting. We recognize that that will be different from what we actually receive for the extension. And then also the extension comes into play because that's how we build the tax levy each year. It's based off of what was extended in the prior year. So, oh, look at that. So property tax levy, so based on prior year amount of taxes extended. So what you do is you take the extension and then you're able to increase that extension by the prior year CPI or 5%, whichever is the smaller of the two. So if CPI is 7.5%, then you're capped at 5%. Then you're capped at 5%. However, if CPI is 2.4%, then 2.4% is what you have to work with for that levy. So this year, so the budget, when we're doing the budget, because our fiscal year goes from July to June, July 1st through June 30th, but tax years go from January 1st to December 31st, we're always having a blend of levy rates. However, these last couple of years, we've been at the max as far as what we can levy, so we're working with a blend of 5% on both. So really, it's just the 5%. Easy math right now. But what's more common, we'll see in previous years where it's like 1.9% and 2.3%, and then you're working with a blend of 2 years, or 0.7 and 1.4, something like that. I actually have a slide that kind of shows what it's been over the last 10 years, so stay tuned. And so this just, at the bottom here, just brings up that we get the installments in the spring and the fall. Unfortunately, this year, the tax bills that usually we would be getting that revenue in August, they're due December 1st. And so there was a delay this year as well in when we were able to receive the fall installment. But thankfully, we were able to rely on our fund balance to get us through that period of time where we would have typically had the taxes received by now. Oh, here it is. So this just shows in previous years the levy amounts, the levy percentages that we were working with, the CPI history for PTEL. And you can see that typically, we're working with an average of, let's say, 1.7 or so over the last 10 years. But then in these last 2 years, 5% and 5%. So just really kind of like an unprecedented. If you were to look at the CPI history for the last 30 years, never have we seen 5% twice. So, and then so I did mention earlier the balloon tax levy. So this year when we're, for the published levy, it's an increase of 6.8%. However, as I mentioned before, we can only really levy for we would only be extended 5% plus any new property, or if there was like a TIF rolling off, then that might get us above the 5%. So in order to capture that, what you do is you do a balloon levy. And so that's when a district requests a levy rate that's higher than whatever CPI may be, to make sure that whatever new growth there is, or any unknown EAV, if there's just a couple of factors that might be unknown at the time, and it's a way to make sure that you're capturing everything that you're able to in order to sustain the operations of the district. And so I just like to harp on this just a little bit more, because I always want to make sure that people know legally we're only going to get what we're able to legally, right? And so even if that number was 20%, that's not what's coming. And I don't want anybody, at home to be thinking like, oh my goodness, it's going to be going up by, an amount that it really isn't, but it, like I said, is just a way to make sure that we're able to get the funds needed to keep our operations going. And then this just shows the levy amounts by fund, by our different funds, just to get a little snapshot there. Of course, the education fund is our largest fund. It's very similar, actually, to how our budget is set up, right, where the education fund is the largest, and then we have these other smaller funds that might be used for specific purposes, such as the IMRF and Social Security, which is our Fund 50, or Operations and Maintenance, which is our Fund 20. And then I put debt service to the bottom because debt service is actually computed a little differently from the other funds there. When it comes to debt service, the clerk's office will determine how much we need to cover our debt issuances, and then that is what we'll receive. And so it's just done a little bit differently. And then, of course, just to bring it on home, because this is, an important piece, right? How does it affect like an individual homeowner in Evanston? And so on a single-family home valued at $400,000, we have here that we're talking about approximately $132 on a tax bill that might be nearly $9,000.
Wow.
And then also just want to take a moment to talk about TIFs. So I briefly mentioned before that that's one of the things that can also affect what we're bringing in when it comes to the tax levy. So TIFs are a tool that's used in Evanston. We have 5 of them, actually 5 active TIFs. And what will happen is that the EAV for an area will be frozen. And so we're not really getting the revenue for any growth that may be happening in that area for a period of time, and that's usually 23 years unless the TIF is extended. And so we have 5 TIFs in Evanston. The next one is going to be closing in 2026, and the last one that closed was the Washington National TIF, that was in 2018. And so each year, there's a joint review board that's required, and we'll be meeting on November 30th to just go over the five active TIFs and how they're performing. And that's with the City of Evanston, District 65. We meet with them as well. Any questions or comments?
Could you maybe just share with us at some point a schedule of the TIFs and their expiration dates?
Yeah.
That would just, it's been a while since I've heard what the TIFs are, and it would just be nice for us to have it.
I could send that information. I don't know if I said, but.
Yeah, you said the one in 26.
You said the next one is.
The one in 2026, yeah. So that's the Howard and Ridge TIF.
Okay.
And then the furthest one out is 2044, and that's the 5/5 TIF, the one that just happened. It just started in 2021.
Okay.
Okay.
You want me to go down the list? Because I know. Stop.
I'll leave that one for you to deal with.
I will send that information out for you guys.
Yeah, because we won't remember, even if you can do it. We won't remember. And we'd ask you to put it in writing. Right. Other questions, board? You always explain things so clearly.
Why, thank you. I'm glad, because sometimes there's a lot going on in here, so I'm glad that it's coming out in a way that's clear.
At least for me, I find it. All right, well, thank you. Oh, I have another line. Is there any further testimony? Hearing no further testimony, I now declare this hearing closed.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. The next item on our agenda is our items for action, the next few. The first item is authorization of superintendent to issue a no trespass letter to individual in accordance with 105 ILCS 52424 of the Illinois School Code and Board Policy 830, visitors to and conduct on school property. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education authorize the superintendent to issue a no trespass letter in substantially the form presented to the board to the individual named in the letter in accordance with Section 2424 of the Illinois School Code and Board Policy 830.
Can I have a second?
Second?
Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Thank you. The next item is acceptance of Illinois School Report Card. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. The next item is the consent agenda, which includes approval of minutes from October 9th, 2023, regular meeting and closed session, approval of bills, treasurer's report from August 2023, and personnel report.
I can't vote on personnel.
Oh, I'm going to hold off on the personnel report and just do the first three. So approval of minutes, approval of bills, and treasurer's report from August of 2023.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, for personnel report, could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Abstain.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. It's okay. I didn't hear my name, but I'm not hearing well tonight, so. Okay. Is there any old or new business that someone wants to share? Okay. If not, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. I move we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned, and it's before 10 o'clock.